What's going on, you guys? I've been missing in action for about a week or two. I apologize for that. I literally got stormed with tons of tests and quizzes and work and, just literally one thing after another. So I haven't been able to get a chance to even dive into the stuff that I wanted to dive into, which is this dev blog from the Grand Tactician. These are the guys behind the upcoming Civil War game. I'm really looking forward to reading this because it deals with the economy. And just looking at this graph, this beautiful thing here, this is beautiful. Look at this. It kind of makes you kind of like reflect on this and just say, wow, there's a lot of stuff that goes into fighting a war. I mean, all the way down from getting the lead and manufacturing, getting to the supply depot, then supply train, and eventually to the army soldier in the field. It's crazy. All right, let's just dive right into it. In Grand Tactician, A Civil War, we are building a complex economy model that will work in the background of the game. The idea is to allow the player utilizing the industrial power of his or her nation and targeting the enemy economy. For example, railroads allow fast movement of troops and supplies across the states. This means destroying the enemy's rail network will hamper his mobility and flexibility in troop concentrations. Rail lines can, of course, be repaired, so maybe it's more important in the long run to make it impossible to maintain the rail network. When the gears of the economy stall, it will become impossible to keep up the momentum in the military operations as well. Lessons learned. Here we take into account the feedback from players of Oliver's previous strategy game, The 7 Years' War, which, by the way, I would strongly recommend you guys take a look at that. That's a really awesome game that I like. In the title, the economy model works well, but it's not very intuitive for most players. Many players felt that the model needed too much micromanagement from the player, making the campaign game play burdensome, especially players who wish to run the military matters only. So one cool thing, just kind of jumping into that, I really liked the 7 Years' War. It had a nice military aspect, but it also had a really cool economic model. And I'm kind of, I'm a fan of Victoria, which had a really complex economy model. And I really like that because you can fight the war, but you can also work on the economy. So it kind of gave you the best of both worlds. But I can understand from people's perception they want to work on just the military side. For this reason, the economy model has been redesigned, made more automatic, working in the background, even without much input from the player. The Grand Tactician can therefore concentrate more on the military matters at hand, think about the big picture instead of worrying about the lack of available building materials being delivered to a new building site in time, for example. To make things work smoothly, we let the markets run the show, allowing the player to influence the system with more macro-level controls. For example, you have your domestic production, trade, import, and export, while supply and demand determine what is being produced and where it is being sold to. The player can manipulate the system by government sponsoring and trade policies. As a historical example, playing as the South, cotton is the main source of income, and the exports can cover costs of importing other goods needed to run the nation. But what if you're blockaded and cannot produce the weapons and ammunitions needed? In the end, instead of the 7 Years' War like interaction with economy, production, and markets, things should feel a lot different. Even if the mechanics work in the background are somewhat similar, instead of player building up industries, managing upgrades and workforce prices at minimum stock level, this time around an industry will expand, upgrade, hire, or even shut down depending on markets, available workforce amount and type, and of course profitability. Another change is the way goods are moved around. In the 7 Years' War, state-sponsored traders move the goods item at a time from point A to B. The amount of traders is limited by market size in the province in question. Depending on prices, supply and demand, and players' priorities, certain goods are moved first while others wait for available traders. This often results in high-profit goods that are maybe irrelevant to players' ongoing war effort being prioritized and local shortages being created. Player is able to manipulate and optimize the system, but it required understanding and micromanagement, like setting up minimum supply levels and manual prioritization, and this per province. Wow. Sometimes adding too many building projects could stall any development for a time, and do I need to mention Prussian loan to any the 7 Years' War veteran? This is where many players became frustrated. We sacked the traders to give economy more flow, literally. So instead of a flow of supplies is created from point of supply to point of demand. The flow utilizes the road, rail, and river networks along with sea trade. So goods will always be moved where needed, but this amount of goods per time unit depends on infrastructure, distance, and demand. The flow happens via hubs we call important infrastructure points, or IIPS, like cities, towns, ports, ferries, crossroads, and so on. Think of it a bit like in the Settlers 1 or 2. The I'm just going to go IPS being the flags, but the goods moving without a worker carrying one at a time from IP to IP. But if you're more interested about the link to war from the military commander's point of view, economy concept example, supplying an army. All right, so this is going to cover the supply. Wow, this is a big one here. Big dev blog. In the above concept image, let's have a look at what it takes to keep an army supplied. In the game, armies are supplied from supply depots. The supplies carried in the army supply trains won't last forever. The lack of supplies will lead to regulation, which will lead to increased sickness and desertion and foraging in the countryside, which will affect the population support and readiness of the armies, and so on. Wow, that's gonna be a lot of depth there. In short, you want to keep all the army well supplied and the enemies not so. When setting up a camp or entrenching, the army will be replenished from the appointed depot. Range to base supplies is of importance, and this will mean that sending armies deep into enemy territory, like in many other strategy games, without proper means of supplying them will end up in a disaster. An army needs a wide range of supplies: arms, ammunition, horses, food for men and the beasts alike, uniforms. These need to be produced or imported, and here economy industries will play a key role. For example, to produce the needed artillery in an ironworks, you need iron, wrought iron, or bronze that are produced in a foundry. That need for raw materials from mines, and so on. In the concept image, you will see some of the industry types in the game. If you're unfamiliar with Civil War history, you know that the South had many shortages in available goods, and the North tried to further increase the effect by attacking the production. Salt is a good example. It was mined or produced in salt works and was important for food preservation and curing leather. Virginia salt works in Saltville were attacked by Union in the first and second battles of Saltville. Sherman is noted as saying salt is eminently contraband. In Grand Tactician, targeting production capability like salt works like it did during the war. If a nation runs out of salt, prices skyrocket, and soon there will be severe hiccups in food and leather production. This will affect the armies and the capability to maintain effective operations as provisions are no longer available. That's sick. Oh man, that's awesome. So that's gonna change my entire campaign. I'm not going to go after Lee. I'm just going to go after the production houses and the supplies and the mining of the South. I don't even have to worry about the Confederate Army. They'll come to me at that point. To fix the situation, the target nation will need to divert funds to restore salt production or to import salt, funds that will be directly needed to pay the troops or repair the raided rail network. So the production facilities and trading infrastructure are important targets to military actions such as raiding and blockades, but the transportation network in forms of IPS and railroads can also be targeted at any point of the shown chart, the arrows. If attacking the supply depot itself is out of the question, cutting the supply route carries the same effect. Pushing into enemy territory, for example, capturing choke points in a road network, mean the flow of goods will stop. That's awesome, or need to be diverted. And taking this a step forward, you can see how the historical strategies such as controlling the Mississippi to cut the Confederacy in half, along with strong blockade, can be implemented in Grand Tactician to achieve the goals of Scott's Great Snake. Wow, that's awesome. Oh man, this is the most accurate, most immersive, most depth strategy game for a Civil War. I mean, this is incredible. Like, I always wanted all these strategy games to have an incredible tactical component, which this has. If you guys visit the website, you can see a couple of their tactical videos. It's amazing. It kind of reminds me of Scourge of War, and they're bringing this awesome strategic level, which is epic here. Our plan is to make the economy an important tool in the Grand Tactician toolbox of strategies, but at the same time, we want the economy in the background without the player needing a degree in economics or forcing him or her to micromanage the details, especially when the player most likely will like to concentrate on matters of sword instead of the plow. When executing military operations produce believable and foreseeable effects in the enemy's system, including economy, we believe we can better grasp the essence of the American Civil War. Wow. I am so motivated about this. Wow. And going back to the 7 Years' War, I did notice it had a really intricate economy system. I did like that because, like I said before, I really am a big Victoria fan from the Paradox series, and they had such a big economic system. I did like that, but now that I can still affect production, and so it kind of takes the micromanagement, and I can do with the macro management and kind of spend more time in the military is going to be nice. I like that, and I could still kind of cut the and affect the economic part of the enemy. So at the same time, so that's going to be awesome. And I could tell you, I am going to be focusing a lot of my campaigns on cutting off key supplies and routes for the Confederacy. You know, Scott's Great Snake Plan. I'm also going to probably use troops to cut off key elements like that salt. I didn't realize that there was a Saltville in Virginia. So interesting. That's going to be on my hit list right there. I'm going to be sure to take that city out. All right, guys. I am really motivated about this one. This is part 1, so I'm assuming there's going to be a part 2. Really looking forward to it. If Grand Tactician's Civil War game is not on your radar, be sure to put it on your radar. Go on YouTube. Subscribe, put them on your Twitter feed so you can catch all these latest awesome dev blogs. Anyway, guys, that does it for me. I will catch you guys in the next one. See you then.